This broadcast will start in 15 seconds. This broadcast will start in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The Voice of Stockton. For more information on The Voice of Stockton, go to thevoiceofstockton.org.
The views and opinions expressed in the following program do not necessarily reflect those of KXVS, The Voice of Stockton, or its parents, affiliates, management, and staff.
This broadcast will start in 60 seconds.
Stocktonians, and welcome to a special edition of Tales and Tips. I am so honored to have with me Councilman Mike Chandler, who is District 2, Lodi City Council, and he is running for re-election in the election this November, just a few short weeks away. Please register to vote. And he's going to talk about everything that's going on in Lodi and how Lodi City Council differs maybe a little bit from Stockton, and just his history in Lodi, why he's running again for City Council, things he's achieved, and things he hopes to achieve. Welcome, Mark. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for the opportunity. Happy to be here.
All right. So tell us about your history in Lodi, history as a city councilman, why you want to run again.
Okay, well, I came to Lodi in 1991 when the Lodi Wine Grape Commission was established, and that was a wonderful experience where the growers in Lodi decided to take matters into their own hands and create their own future instead of being whipped about by some of the market forces that were making the economics very unpleasant for grape growers in those days. And they self-assessed themselves to create a wine grape commission that would educate growers on better practices, that would promote the region and improve its reputation. I had, at that time, about 12 years in the wine industry already as a winemaker, as a marketer, as a manager, and my resume and their job description fit together like hand in glove. I started in September of 1991 and stayed with that position over 20 years until 2011. So over that time period, we had a lot of successes in the wine industry, and of course, the newspaper and the city of Lodi were always interested in what was happening in the wine industry. It was such a big component of the local economy that I was able to achieve a couple of leadership roles, often quoted in the newspaper. So I had some pretty good name recognition by the time 2014 rolled around, and I was encouraged by the business community to run for city council. It was a successful run. Had a great time campaigning and implementing our ideas for the improvement of Lodi. And I'm running again so I can finish up on some of the things that we haven't quite nailed down.
Awesome. And that's amazing to hear. And we should also mention that you've had leadership in Lodi Rotary as a past president, and we'll talk about that. And one thing that really impressed me when you and I were just talking, you're out there routinely doing your own precinct walking, and you said you enjoy it. You like the contact with people. Oh,
I love the one-on-one. You really get people to let their hair down a little bit and ask them what's on their minds, and they tell you. And it's that personal. People love the fact that it's the candidate themselves. You get credit for just showing up, but also you get to interact with them. I get to pet their dogs. I'm a dog person, so I get to establish a little bit of a relationship, and maybe they let you put a campaign sign in their yard or whatever. But it's very gratifying to me. I'm a marketer at heart, and that's direct marketing in the most visceral way. So. And
it shows you care. It shows that it really matters to you. If you're willing to put yourself out there and they can ask you anything, and you want to hear their concerns, that means that you're serious about this and it really means something to you.
Absolutely. And we talked a little bit about how this election is going to be by districts now. When I ran in 2014, all the council members were elected at large, and 3 seats were available in 2014. I was second out of 7 candidates to be elected. This year it's different. We were sued by the Hispanic Defense League to force us to go to districts, and in all the years that it's part of the California Voter Rights Act, and in all the years that communities, smaller communities like ours who don't really think that districts are justified, none of those communities has ever been successful at defending themselves or countersuing. So we just, in order to take the best economic path, we established the boundaries, which took quite a bit of time. We used professional demographers to set the boundaries. And so I've got this district that's a lot of northern Lodi across the top band of Lodi, and then a tab that goes down from Turner Road to Lodi Avenue between Ham Lane and Mills. So
Awesome.
It makes it a little bit easier to campaign in a way because a little more geographically defined.
You can target that population.
And you can target that population. So I won't get quite as many miles in this time, and I won't have to print quite as many brochures, but it'll be a more intimate experience with my district. So I'm really thrilled about that.
And roughly how many people live in that district?
Each district has about 12,000 people of the five. It's roughly 60,000 people, 65,000 in Lodi.
And this election in November 6th, there's 3 seats that are open, but you're the only one that has an opponent. Is that correct?
Yes. Dr. Nakanishi is in District 1 unopposed. I'm in District 2 with 1 opponent. And Councilman Keene is in District 3 running unopposed.
And then once the election happens and you start your term, then as a group, you'll select the mayor and the vice mayor?
Yes, the first meeting of the year, which is first week in December, we have what's called the reorganization meeting, where the council swears in the new council members, and then the council elects the mayor and the vice mayor for that following year. And I was mayor in 2016. The year I was sworn into office in 2014, the same night I was elected vice mayor. So I served as mayor in 2016.
Wow, awesome, excellent. So let's go back and talk more about your experience and a little bit about your past. Talk about Rotary. What does Rotary mean to you, and why are you a part of Lodi Rotary?
Well, I've been a member of Rotary for over 30 years. I originally started in Rotary when I was up in Murphy's, when I was running Stephen O. Winery in the early 1980s. And it's really been a window onto the world of what the needs are around the world, charitable needs for water and literacy and all those things. Polio, a massive program that we're this far from curing or ending that disease. So I love the values of Rotary. I love the camaraderie. I'm a past president for the Lodi Rotary Club, and one of my pet projects was that I started a dictionary distribution program. I'm big on literacy. I used to read a lot as a kid, and it opens up your world. And so we initiated.
It's a gateway to everything.
Absolutely. So we have every third grader in the Lodi School District gets a dictionary from Rotary, and it's a pretty neat. It's not just a dictionary. It has all kinds of documents that the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence and lots of information on the different states around. So it's more than just a dictionary. And in many cases, I love to go to the classroom and hand them out personally. And in many cases, you know that that's the only book that child has. So they immediately go to their desk and they put their name in it. And it's just a lot of fun. And
they're so excited. And I'm a new member to Lodi Rotary, but I've been a member of Rotary Club of Stockton on and off for over 10 years. And I love doing the dictionary distribution, and I agree with you in terms of literacy is just pivotal. And to see the kids light up that they have a book that they own that can go with them, and there's so much valuable information. It's like a mini almanac.
Yes.
And it's just huge to be doing that.
Yeah. So I'm very proud of that. That was one of my accomplishments of my presidency, and we still fund it and still actively participate every single year.
Awesome. Awesome. And I'm excited to be a part of that. Let's talk about what your term as a city councilman, what are the things that you're proud of that have happened, 3 or 5 things that you were able to change?
Well, one of the things I was able to build on was my success in making Lodi more prominent in the world of wine. I've spent 20 years doing that for the grower and winery community, and it has grown into a larger agritourism effort. I was the co-founder of the Lodi Conference and Visitor Bureau back in the 90s when I went to the city as the chairman of the Lodi Wine Grape Commission, and the city asked the commission asked the city to partner with them because we needed a conference and visitor bureau, didn't have one. And the city said, well, we don't want to make it look like we're hiring more personnel. So if somebody wanted to put that under their umbrella, which they looked over at me and said we would do a split. We'll fund 2/3 of the budget if you'll cover 1/3 of it. And
Awesome.
my board approved that. And so the Conference and Visitor Bureau actually started in the Lodi Wine Grape Commission offices for its first 5 years.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Because it has a great location now. Do
Lovely
you want to share?
downtown, yes, right downtown on School Street, a great location. And so when I say that I'm leveraging that success, now I'm in a position of approving hotels and restaurant applications and building the infrastructure to entertain all those people that are coming to town to enjoy our wine.
Awesome.
And when they get there, they find out that not only is there wine tasting, but there is bird viewing with the Crane Festival. There's cycling. We have Bike Lodi is a very active group, and I love to ride with those folks. One of my vineyards is right out by where the Lodi Parachute Center is, so you can do things as mundane as fishing and watching wildlife, or you can go jump out of an airplane.
Awesome. And there was just recently a bike and wine tour through Lodi. I think, if it not this weekend, the weekend before.
Yes, yes.
Awesome.
And there's one coming up called Giro di Vino, the first week in November.
Okay.
There are about 18 wineries participating, and you ride from winery to winery. And there's food stops and a tasting stop, and that's about 44 miles. But when you break it up with a few stops and a little sip of wine here and there,
It's all good.
it's a great day. Yeah.
All right. And I've participated in the wine and chocolate event that happens Valentine's or around
Right.
Valentine's.
Yes.
And there's several other events throughout the
So those are all events that I helped create. The ZinFest is
ZinFest is
the
amazing.
big kahuna. The wine and chocolate, we had one called the First Sip, which is during the fall. It's changed names now. But we created several festivals to get people to come to Lodi.
Wonderful.
And I like to say we have a 100% conversion rate. When someone, even the most jaded wine writer, when they come to Lodi and they see the authenticity of the growers and the vintners and they taste the wines, they go back converted and they start writing great things about Lodi.
Awesome.
But it is a one-on-one experience where you've got to get them to Lodi. And I also used to go do wine seminars all over the country with Lodi Wines to dispel the old, outdated reputation that it was just jug wine country.
And one thing that I also really like is that the wineries, and people don't necessarily always like this, but I like that they're spread apart. And each one has their own theme. The owners are all very personable. They're very proud of what they're doing. They're excited. They want people to come and visit, and it's a very warm reception. They're happy when people are there.
Absolutely. And you often will be meeting with a family member over the tasting room bar, which used to happen other places, but it doesn't so much anymore. So it's a very authentic experience, and people just love it.
Awesome. And so what other accomplishments have you done while you've been on city council?
Yes, we've done a lot. You know that the homeless situation is a serious situation in Lodi. It's got a lot of components to it. There's the person who just is out of their home, but there's also people that are compromised by drug or alcohol addiction, which makes them harder to deal with. But we've marshaled a lot of resources at the city council level to help deal with the homeless individuals. We have a dedicated homeless liaison police officer, and Officer Holtz held that position originally, and he did a stellar job of getting people's information. Where were they originally? Where was their last known address? What's their phone number? Who do they hang with? What are their personal issues that need to be dealt with? What kind of resources can we bring to their aid? And of the somewhere around 200 homeless people in Lodi, 80 of them were placed in programs or back with family.
Wonderful.
And
That's huge.
Yes, Officer Holtz did a wonderful job. Unfortunately, we had 2 of the lower income hotels burned down within a couple of months of each other, and each of those displaced about 40 or 45 people. So the number kind of went back up. But the good news is that Officer Holtz was able to get so many people the help that they needed. And now we're concerned that some of the people that are left are the people that truly don't want help and are harder to convince that there's another way. So that's one level, and now we have another officer, Officer Holtz has been promoted to another position, but we have Officer Dunphy. And we are, because of the change in the nature of the homeless population, we're leaning a little more on the enforcement side. So things that might have been overlooked earlier are not being overlooked anymore. So if your dog isn't licensed, or your bicycle isn't licensed, or if you're in possession, all those things are going to be prosecuted, and make it a less comfortable place to be homeless, because Lodi is actually a pretty pleasant spot. It's got, great climate and generous people.
And beautiful city.
And it's a beautiful city.
Minimal graffiti. We want to keep it that way.
Right. So Lodi has been recognized as a leader in their homelessness efforts. It's not just the police department. We have, at the city level, we established a committee on homelessness, and I'm on the committee, and Councilmember Keene is on also. We have two-pronged efforts. There's a short-term solutions committee and a long-term solution committee. So we're making sure that we take care of what the immediate needs are of the people on the street, but what can we do in the longer term to provide some shelter. There is a concept currently in vogue in the homeless treatment it's called Housing First, and get people off the street, and then you can, once you get them sheltered, you can start to deal with their other problems and their other needs. So we do have long-term plans in that area. Also, we've worked very closely with the faith community and the nonprofit community. There used to be feeding in the parks, which we didn't think was constructive, because you don't get the opportunity to really engage with those people. So now even the faith-based groups will feed at the Salvation Army, and there's a rotating schedule of which group is going to help feed. Salvation Army has relaxed their sobriety rules to allow people to go in and get a meal. They can't be residents unless they're sober, but they can come in and get meals. And once a month on a Friday afternoon, they have a homeless fair where people can come in, get a shower, see a doctor, see a vet, or get some of those kind of needs taken care of.
And Grace and Mercy too.
And then Grace and Mercy is just down the street from the Salvation Army, and I know that you know Cheryl, and awesome. The wonderful work that she's doing. It's just very inspirational, feeding people. There's another group called Take Back Lodi, and I think this is one that really sets Lodi apart. It's totally voluntary, headed up by Mark Armstrong, who's the general manager at the Grape Festival. And it started from his frustration of having lots of homeless people around the property, breaking into things, stealing things, and he just got fed up, and he started this group, Take Back Lodi. And now there are some 900 volunteers that do regular.
I'm on there too. Yeah. It's awesome. It's important.
And they connect with the Sheriff's Department, the City of Lodi, and the California Highway Patrol to do cleanups on the river and underneath the freeway. And their tactic has been to repeatedly go clean these camps out. And there used to be 4 or 5 homeless camps on the McCollum River of up to 50 or 60 people, and they're all gone. And I mean, there's nobody on the river, maybe 1 or 2 people now. But, and that's just the constant effort that they put towards it. And so it's a whole lot of people, different entities working together.
And we have a DA liaison now, too.
Yes, and I've met him, Robert. I've met him. He's been up to our Rotary Club, and I think that's wonderful. I think the DA is doing a great job, putting forth the resources that she can.
Yeah, and on the homeless task force, I'm a member of that. I believe the past mayor of Lodi is a member. I've seen him at least at meetings. And you're right, they've adopted the Housing First. And it's such a challenge because not only in Lodi, but in Stockton, there's not a lot of affordable housing. And if we could find a way to increase that, I think that would also help in resolving things.
Right. Well, I'm encouraged by the early efforts that, our previous sheriff was in favor of converting part of the Honor Farm to help people with housing. There's a Ready to Work program where they're getting training and they're getting returned back into the working world. And I think there's
John Mendelson is heading that up.
Right. And I think there's a lot of promise there.
Yes.
The other aspect that Lodi, we're not in this alone. We do work with the county, with the Continuum of Care, with Adam Cheshire, And
Our new homeless czar.
right, right. And there is the potential for some funding, because we're short on funding, but there's some potential for some funding to come down from the state through the county, and we're all working very closely together. So
Awesome.
I'm optimistic.
That's encouraging. That's encouraging.
Yes.
So I had mentioned to you that I'd like you to list kind of your top 5 issues that you think are issues for Lodi. So obviously homelessness is one of them.
Yes.
What's another issue that you'd like to tackle more if you're reelected?
Well, certainly we need to focus on public safety. We need more officers in Lodi. We've had, in addition to the homeless concerns, we've had a crime, increase in crime with the state mandated releases from AB 109 and 47. They've allowed people to be released from the prisons into the jails and from the jails onto the street. So property crime is up, violent crime is up, and we need more officers on the street. We have about 61 officers on our force right now, and yet we're budgeted for 71. And we need to fill those extra 10 positions. And that's a very high priority of mine. And we need to help both the police department and the fire department get up to full capacity. And so those are things that are really front of mind for me. And general economic development is a big concern of mine. And lastly, we need to have a transparent city government in terms of how we do our budgeting, how we do our expenses and so forth. I think there's some questions amongst the public about, it looks like it's kind of in a box, and I think people deserve to be a part of the process. Yeah.
And we should talk about the property tax that is in discussion.
Yeah,
there
actually,
as
it's a
well,
sales
or
tax.
sales tax.
Yes, it's a sales tax. It's called Measure L, and it would
Okay.
move our. We currently, Lodi is the lowest sales tax in the county at 7.75%. This would add 0.5% to go up to 8.25%. It would raise approximately $5.4 million a year. And while I never ran for office to increase taxes, I do see the wisdom of putting this tax measure on the ballot to let the public vote on whether they want it or not. I think it's necessary. One of the good things about a sales tax is that we've been talking about all this tourism. Well, fully 25% of the burden of that sales tax revenue
visitors.
will come from visitors. So it really doesn't hit our citizens as hard as other types of taxes would. And that $5.4 million would help us maintain our critical services, and it would help to make some room in the budget. The pension bill has to be paid. So either the pension bill is going to squeeze out critical services, or we're going to have the revenue and the resources to maintain all of our services as well as cover our pension obligation.
And we can't hire new people if we have obligations that we can't meet. Our city manager was just at our club discussing
Yes,
this
so
whole concern.
it's really a challenge here in Lodi in particular, and I'm sure it's true in Stockton as well. We are in the Central Valley. Central Valley is an agricultural community, which generally means the average wage is somewhat lower. But when you need to hire people in professional categories like city managers and department heads at your utility and your water and the police and fire, you're competing with Bay Area values and salaries. So that's where it makes it very difficult for a town like Lodi to attract people, because our salaries are a little bit lower, and so it makes it more challenging.
Although the cost of living is less, housing is
The cost of
less,
living is less, and the quality of life is so much greater. And if you consider
especially in Lodi.
the value of your time in terms of commuting and things like that. So we see, some people coming back to Lodi that were raised there, and maybe they went off for early career or college, but they respect the quality of life that they enjoyed, and they want to do that again. So it's a matter of getting the word out. Being a policeman these days, with the so much turmoil the last 3 years or so, it's not the first choice of young people, getting out of high school or junior college, and so that's made it difficult.
And it's challenging also because, unfortunately, some of our young people may have made some poor decisions that then disqualify them for a profession in the police service industry.
That's very true. Some of the people that do go to the academy, it turns out after they can't pass the security requirements, or they've got something on their record, they did something stupid when they were younger, and it's going to follow them, unfortunately. So,
how can we promote or advertise for more officers in Lodi?
Well, the outreach is going beyond the usual geographic. Usually it was sort of Stockton and Lodi is where the outreach went, but now they're reaching out into the Bay Area and other communities up and down the San Joaquin Valley. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Excellent.
People that appreciate the lifestyle and the quality of life and the smaller town atmosphere. Lodi's crime rate, while it is significant, it's not as violent as some other jurisdictions where somebody could work, and we hope that that will attract them.
Awesome, awesome. And you and I were talking about nonprofits and people helping in the community. You mentioned a couple nonprofits with the homelessness issue. Did you want to give a shout out to others and how other nonprofits can help make Lodi a better place?
Well, there's so many really wonderful efforts like Lodi House, which does have temporary housing for mothers with children. They've done a terrific job. The service clubs have all adopted a park or a certain, area of need. And so I think that I've just seen so much good work done on behalf of the nonprofits that you've got to give everybody a pat on the back. The Kiwanis Club built a wonderful shelter at Lodi Lake Park where they sponsor their pancake breakfast every 4th of July. Well, they put up a permanent structure there, and it'll be there for a long, long time. And our Rotary Club has done a lot of park renovations. I think that's an area that also, when we're back to Measure L with the sales tax, it's designed to help with the police, fire, other city functions, but especially the parks, which have a lot of deferred maintenance. Deferred maintenance is more expensive to conduct than the regular maintenance. Lodi Lake Park has, the McCollum River has eroded part of the bank there, and we've gotten some funds through the Assembly. Jim Cooper was very generous in finding us some money. And but we need to keep our parks in good shape. And the other one is, we were talking about literacy earlier, the library. The Lodi Library Foundation has done a fantastic job of funding enhancements to the library. And I just went to their fundraiser the other night, and they've got some great programs. They've got a after-school homework help program that the young kids can come in, and there isn't a parent at home, so it's better to have them at the library. It's a friendly, safe place for kids to be, and they can get their homework done.
And that's awesome. And they have people volunteering. So that's something that if one of our listeners doesn't belong to a service club or isn't working with a nonprofit already, that's somewhere they could go and volunteer.
Right.
And help kids in our community right away. Love Lodi is an awesome project I've participated with, and granted they're not donating money for long-term projects, but it's amazing to see all the people come out for a one-day huge cleanup, painting, you name it, kind of fix it up for Lodi.
Yes, I've participated the last 3 years in a row, and it's been a lot of fun to clean up things that were neglected, and you're right, it's just a one-day thing. I wanted to go back on the library just for a moment. We have a new library director, and I was speaking with the interim director a few weeks ago, and she brought forward the Lodi Library is participating in, it's one of 64 libraries in California that's been designated by the Pacific Library Foundation to initiate a program called Student Success Initiative. And one of the fundamental activities they do is they get a library card into the hands of every student in the school district.
Oh, wonderful.
So what a wonderful
Awesome.
nexus between the education community and the library community. And so that's one of my priorities, to make sure that that is successful this year.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And do you by chance know the library hours? the days that they're open and how late?
Well, the only day they're closed is Friday, which is
Okay.
a surprise to me, but that's their lowest traffic day, so they're closed
Okay.
on Friday.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's 10 till 8, 10 till 6, 10 till 8.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
they have long hours. That's great because that's a huge resource. And as you mentioned earlier, it's a safe place for kids to be,
Yes.
especially if parents aren't home. And they're going to be more focused on doing homework and reading if they're there.
Exactly.
So that's a win-win. That's awesome.
And they have adult instructors and mentors that can help them learn the value of reading and getting your homework done, and just forming good habits that will serve you through later in life.
Awesome. Excellent. That's amazing. That's wonderful. A huge resource that's available. And earlier we were talking about some awards that you've won. So if you'd like to highlight that, we'll talk about those. I'd also like you to list your website, Facebook page. How can people reach out to help you
Okay.
in your campaign if you'd like that? And then any final things that you'd like to comment on that we haven't touched on.
Okay. Yes, I've been awarded a number of recognitions from my 40 years in the wine and agriculture industry. It's been terrific, and the 20 years that I spent with the Lodi Wine Grape Commission really thrust me into a lot of circumstances where leadership was required, and some people step back a step when the call goes out for a leader or for volunteers, and I always took a step forward.
All right,
So
excellent,
I
'cause you're a
was
leader.
Yeah, thank you. I was the head of the Society of Wine Educators in the late 1990s, and that's an international group of people who teach about wine. So that was something that helped expand my network and my recognition for Lodi and for myself as well. And I was in 2006, I was selected by Sunset Magazine as their Wine Professional of the Year. That was fun. And I've also been recognized as in the Lodi Community Hall of Fame for agricultural service. I was recognized at the San Joaquin County Agriculture Hall of Fame as well for agriculture service. A couple of times I've been named in these top 100 lists. I was named in 2011 as one of the most influential people in California wine. And just recently in 2016, I was also named among the top 50 wine industry leaders by Wine Business Magazine. So when you stay at it, and when you stay in the forefront, and you're motivated, and you're not willing to take a risk, and not afraid of taking a risk, and applying your skills, then things happen. Mm-hmm. And I have to also give a shout out to a program that I participated in back in the late 1980s called the California Agricultural Leadership Program. And that's a program that is funded by industry, but it is it takes place in 4 different cooperating universities in California: UC Davis, Cal State Fresno, Cal Poly Pomona, and Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. And I'm a graduate of Cal Poly San Luis Obispo in the first place, so that was kind of like old home week for me. But it's a 2-year program where you spend a weekend per month learning about society, the arts, government policy, and also at the end of the first year, there's a 2-week trip to another region of the U.S. agriculture, so you get to see what is happening in other states, and then you spend a week in Washington, D.C. With legislators, policy people. Our group actually got to go into the White House, in the Oval Office, and meet with President Reagan.
Wow.
It was just towards the end of his
That's
term.
awesome.
So and it didn't matter which party you're from. After you walk out of the Oval Office, you're pretty
You're
pretty
amazed.
excited. So
that's huge. That sounds like it's
yes,
phenomenal.
yeah, phenomenal experience. And then the next year, there's more of the training in terms of taking on leadership responsibility. There's at that time it was a 3-week trip. It's now only a 2-week trip, but they would take you to other parts of the world that you wouldn't go on vacation, and because they wanted you to see, and you come home with total appreciation for what we have here in the U.S. And my group went to Egypt, Kenya, Zimbabwe, and South Africa. So we saw a completely other side of the world. And you come home and you are committed to how great it is in California, let's make it better. So people that graduate from this program serve on commissions. They head organizations like what I did. Often they run for public office, and it just launches them into more of a leadership status. They used to describe this program as in 2 years we give you 20 years worth of life experience. Wow. And it's really true.
Wow.
And we maintain—
What's the name of it again?
California Agricultural Leadership Program. And we maintain our relations with people in Washington, D.C. We have an exchange program where we send a group of about a dozen people out to D.C. to interview people in agencies and in legislative offices for a week-long trip back to California to go onto our farms to see what our circumstances are, and they can understand the impact of their regulations on how we have to farm. And they stay in the homes of the farmers.
Wow.
They have their meals with farmers and with clusters of farmers. It's a very effective program.
And it's going to make them look at whatever they're doing differently.
Absolutely. And it's relationship building. So when I go back to DC, I've got a list of 80 or 100 people that I've intersected with over the years. So, and that's a big part of leadership also, is being able to listen to all sides of a story, but to create a personal relationship where you can make progress with someone, even though you may not be 100% on the same page. What can we agree on, and how can we move forward?
And it also gives our community a voice, because if you have connection to people in Washington, they're going to listen to you about what's going on in our community.
Yes.
And our concerns. And
right. So that program I graduated from in 1989, and when I came to interview in Lodi, there were about half a dozen graduates of the Ag Leadership Program on my interview committee.
Wow.
And so I attribute a lot of the success that Lodi has made in the wine industry to that program, because those people knew they had to make a commitment on behalf of their communities. And those are some of the same ones now that have opened, jumped through the windows of opportunity that the Wine Grape Commission helped bring to them, to vertically integrate, to instead of just selling their grapes to a big winery, to make some wine, put your own family name on it. And jobs have been created for generations down the line, not just in farming now, but you need a winemaker and a manager and a marketing person and tasting room. So I call it farmland preservation, because it keeps more family members on the farm. It's fantastic development.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And going back to the wine industry in Lodi, I didn't ask you, how many wineries do we have in our community? Well,
when we started in 1991, we had 8, and there are over 100 today. And there are about a dozen tasting rooms in downtown Lodi. I mean, you could come to downtown Lodi and not even go out in the country and have a wonderful experience tasting wines from several different properties. So that's it's a complete transformation of Lodi from what it was 25 years ago.
Wybell just recently, a couple months ago, expanded and had their ribbon cutting.
Yes, yeah. Wybell has been a great partner for many years, and I remember in the early days I had to try to convince people to open tasting rooms when they established their winery. In the year 2000, the Wine Grape Commission owned the opened the Lodi Wine and Visitor Center, and the promise was from the grower community that if somebody came to Lodi to taste wine 7 days a week, there was going to be doors open for them to taste wine. And so we funded that until we come to today, where there are many wineries that have tasting rooms 7 days a week. There are many offerings, and the Wine Grape Commission continues to operate their tasting room facility there on the same property as Wine and Roses Hotel.
At Turner.
Turner and Lower Sacramento Road, yeah.
Awesome. It's a beautiful facility. I've been there too. And Wine and Roses is awesome. And that's a win-win partnership, because people that go there to taste wine also see the awesome facility.
Yes, yes. And, we're getting more and more hotels in Lodi. I'm very happy about that. And it creates employment, and it helps burnish our reputation as a quality wine producer.
I think there was a ribbon cutting yesterday for Lodi Hill. I didn't get to go to that, but
I missed it.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
We're both busy.
Yes, exactly.
Anything else that you'd like to highlight that we haven't touched on? And please give your contact info, so if anyone wants to help you in your campaign.
Right.
And tell us how people can help you in your campaign.
Well, there certainly, for those especially who are in my district, I have a very active signage campaign. I've got signage in most of the major intersections in the Lodi area. I've got a wonderful team of volunteers on my campaign committee that have a variety of skills, and that's one of them. But my website is www.chandlerforcitycouncil.com. You're welcome to get on there and look at my goals and my values and my future plans.
Do you have a Facebook page also?
And Facebook is Mark Chandler for Council. And just sharing with people that you might know in Lodi that, again, it's a little complicated because of the district process. I sort of preferred the at-large, but in the meantime, I am focusing on that district in terms of walking my precincts, and if somebody wants to drop me a line and wants to put a sign in their yard, I'd be happy to do it.
Awesome. What about help with mailers, sending out mailers?
I'm doing it mostly online and in person, and because of the district, it's hard to, my district doesn't have a zip code. So doing mailers is not as cost effective as it would have been last time around. Okay. And I do have an opponent in this race, and when you compare our resumes, I've got 27 years of industry leadership and community leadership in Lodi at so many levels, from my work with the Wine Grape Commission, my work with Rotary Club, and serving on the City Council. I serve as a council member. I serve on the Northern California Power Agency Board of Commissioners. In Lodi, we own our own electric utility. So I'm deeply into, I didn't know a thing about energy when I started, but I now know a lot more, and how Lodi seeks to provide energy to its customers at a discount to the PG&E rates. And so, just on balance, I've got a lot of experience that needs to come to bear, because this next 4 years is not going to be a time to have someone that's inexperienced in city matters making the kinds of decisions we're going to have to make.
Lots of critical issues.
A lot of critical issues, how to deal with the pension crisis, how to keep the wheels on. And I've been through a lot of challenging times before, and I'm happy to provide my leadership for what's ahead of us the next 4 years.
Awesome, awesome. Any comments on water or marijuana? I'll leave that up to you, whether you want to comment or not.
Well, the water, I'm glad you asked that question, because in terms of water, Lodi City Council 10 or 15 years ago made a very smart decision to buy excess water from the Woodbridge Irrigation District, which, because so many farmers had converted to drip irrigation, and I'm one of them, you use less water.
Yes.
So the irrigation district had extra water, and they went to the city of Lodi and said, do you want to buy some water? And the history of California is a history of a fight over water. And the council was bright enough to buy the water. It took them a few years to figure out exactly how they were going to process it or utilize it. Were they going to just inject it into the aquifer to improve the aquifer, or were they going to filter it and use it for their domestic supply? And they did the latter. They built a water treatment plant, which treats about 9 million gallons a day.
Wow.
And
that's a huge
that we're pulling off of the McCollum River. And as a result, the aquifer under Lodi is actually rising. The water table is rising under Lodi.
Yay.
And we're using about a third of the water in Lodi comes from the surface water from Woodbridge Irrigation, which means that's a third of our supply that we're not pulling out of the ground. So very, very long, great foresight on behalf of the council.
Forward thinking. That's wonderful.
Yeah. And then on the marijuana, I don't really have much of an opinion. We've, at the local level, declined to have dispensaries in Lodi. There's some question as to whether deliveries will be approved or not, but at the moment they're not. But there's also a state law that's being implemented that may force communities to allow for the distribution. I personally have concern about marijuana being legal and younger people having access to it, and I'm not naive. I know it's available anyway. But even walking around last night doing my canvassing, I know who the people are in town that like in my neighborhood that like to smoke pot in the evenings. So if it's that common and not you know, it's just, it's a concern of mine that youth will engage it earlier than they might otherwise, and that can send them down a path that's not constructive in the long term.
And not just youth, animals. I can tell you in ER, I'm seeing a lot of dogs coming in that are accidentally ingesting marijuana that we're having to treat, and it can be very serious.
I believe it, yeah. So thank you for the question.
You're welcome. Anything else that you'd like to add?
No, I'm just excited. I'm a 4th generation California farmer. I'm 7th generation California. And so agriculture is in my blood, and the San Joaquin Valley is in my blood, and now leading Lodi is in my blood. I came to Lodi in 1991, and I thought I would be there for a couple of years and move on to some other fancy wine district, and I fell in love with the place. I fell in love with the wines. I fell in love with a local girl, and so I think I'm here for the long haul.
Awesome.
I had promised my wife that I would never run for public office. I broke that promise in 2014, but she embraced it. She's my treasurer, and she does a wonderful job. And I had also promised her years ago that I knew too much about the wine industry to launch my own brand, but here we are putting up 1,000 cases of wine for our own brand.
And
so
what's your brand? Let's give a shout out.
String of broken promises. Burlington Chandler Wine.
Awesome.
And you can find it at several places, restaurants here in Stockton, and more in Lodi.
Awesome. Is there a tasting room?
No tasting room yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. And I just want to give a reminder to people to vote on November 6th. Do you know what the last day is for people to register to vote?
I'm sorry, I don't have that one right on the top of my head, but
it's usually a couple weeks before the election. But
right.
let's make sure we don't miss that date. If you're not registered, please register to vote. And just an open opportunity to any candidate out there. You are welcome to come on to the Voice of Stockton and have your voice heard. And with that, I'm going to end our show for today. Thank you for listening. I am the Voice of Stockton. You are the Voice of Stockton. We are the Voice of Stockton. Let's make it a great day.
Thank you.